Hey, if you brought a Bible, open to Genesis chapter 23. We are talking about a guy named Abraham, and this is the last sermon in the series on Abraham. I was waiting for oh, thank God, right? We've been studying this guy since January 11th. We've been going through the life of Abraham, and before you send me an email, I know Abraham is in chapter 24. He's going to die soon, but we're done with this series. Today, faith affects integrity. Faith affects integrity. Now, when I say integrity, I'm not just talking about honesty. Integrity is when what you believe shows up in how you live. Nothing reveals character faster than money, conflict, and grief. And good news, all three are in Genesis chapter 23. It begins with the sad story of Sarah dying, Abram's wife. And then he gets into this weird negotiation, purchase for land that's almost going to feel like, why is this even in the Bible? Why do we need this? But in the middle of this negotiation, the people he's negotiating with are clearly not following the Lord. They're pagans, they're the Hittites, and they said to him, surely you are a prince of God among us. They recognized something about this guy that was different than themselves, that was different about everybody else they've done business with, that was different about everybody who lived around them. They saw something, not perfection, but integrity. And that matters because this isn't the same old Abraham that we've been studying for 12 chapters, right? Let's be honest. Sometimes along this journey, you're like, how did this clown get in the Bible? Right? Then you flip the page, you're like, this dude, mighty warrior, rescues people, gigantic acts of faith. And then you flip the page and you're like, well, he's disqualified. He's not going to make it. And what we've watched Abraham do over the years, it's like 60 years we've studied this guy. I know it feels like that since January 11th, but 60 years of his life. He has slowly but surely, at each step, surrendered his life to God. When he does something good, he gives God the credit. When he messes up, he repents and he gets right with God. And he's slowly surrendered. And what we're going to see in chapter 3 is the wrong word stuck in my head now. Culmination of a man who has lived his life surrendered to God. No more fearful Abraham, no more lying Abraham, no more manipulative Abraham, no more him trying to force his way and help God out. This is an older, steadier, slower, surrendered, but not perfect, changed man. Under pressure, we're going to see Abraham grieve differently, negotiate differently. He's going to handle conflict differently. And he's going to treat people differently, not because now he's learned how to be the good, godly person, but sometimes the biggest evidence of the work that God is doing in you is not what he does through you, it's what you become. Faith affects integrity. Throughout this series, we've asked the question over and over is, are you surrendering to God? Are you allowing God to do the work in you that that he wants to do? When people look back over your life, will they see someone who said they believed the Bible and knew how to quote scripture and knew all the verses and understood theology but didn't love people? But didn't treat people respectfully? Didn't do what was right? We're going to read chapter 23 together, and I want you to watch how this man that we've seen grow and screw up and grow and screw up and win and fail, how God has slowly over time changed him into a man of integrity. Let's read Genesis 23 together. I'm in the English Standard Version. I try to say that at least once a year because somebody always says, what version do you read from? Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is in Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abram went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, I'm a sojourner and a foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I might bury my dead out of my sight. And the Hittites answered Abraham, Hear us, my lord. You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land, and he said to them, If you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me, and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah. I practiced that. Machpelah. That was good. Which he owns. It's at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as property for a burying place. Now Ephron was sitting among the Hittites. Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites and all who went in at the gate of his city. No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, But if you will, hear me. I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, My lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver, what's that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field throughout its whole area, was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites before all who went in at the gate of his city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah east of Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. Faith affects integrity. Everything about Abraham is different now. And whether it's passed down through the oral history of Abraham to Isaac and Isaac to Jacob and Jacob to his sons, and 300 years later, Moses sits down and writes it, whether it was told orally or written down inspired by God's presence, there's a reason we have this story in Genesis 23. There's a reason we see this much more mature, much more surrendered Abraham. So let's go through it verse by verse. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that's in Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Genesis makes no attempt to pretend that Sarah was perfect. We've seen all Sarah's faults along the way. But she mattered. She's one of the few women that get named in Genesis. There's like Eve, I think there's 2 other girls, and then Sarah. She's important to the story. Abraham went in to mourn and weep. Faith grieves honestly. This almost feels like, is it the story of Sarah dying, or is it the story of this weird real estate purchase? And why does it kind of all fit together? Well, faith grieves honestly because faith isn't fake. Like Abraham grieves deeply. And I don't know if you've picked up on this. I'm kind of in the funeral business, right? I do these a lot. And it seems the last 15, 20 years, there's this cultural shift. And let me tell you, it's only in the United States. So that should immediately be like, how come we're the only ones dumb enough to do this? I don't like saying hard things to you, so I'm just going to say it to Alan. So, Alan, people do some really dumb things, right? Like instead of grieving and mourning, let's just try to skip that whole process, and we're just going to say we're having a celebration of life. Now, don't get me wrong. There comes a time to celebrate the person who lived. But this, let's skip past the mourning section and pretend like it doesn't hurt, doesn't bring any relief. Don't do that, Alan. This idea that we can just be distracted and we can skip over that part and, well, he's in heaven, she's in heaven, so we're not going to mourn and grieve. Abraham believed Sarah was in heaven. The Bible at no point pretends like it's not okay to grieve. When David's son died, he wept. Jeremiah wept. When Jesus showed up after Lazarus had died, he gets to the cemetery to raise Lazarus from the dead. And what's the shortest verse in the Bible? He wept. It doesn't display a lack of faith to grieve. It's good for the soul. Paul doesn't say we do not grieve. Paul said we do not grieve like those who have no hope. Yes, you're going to grieve. You're going to mourn. Let's not pretend like things don't hurt and just fake and lie to each other. Jesus said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. If you want to be comforted, mourn. Romans says, weep with those who weep, Alan. So, Alan, I don't want to catch you coming up to somebody who's grieving and tapping them on the back and shh. We're like, shut up. You're making me uncomfortable. If they're crying, cry with them. Weep with those who weep. Mourn with those who mourn. It's not a lack of faith. Mourning isn't unbelief. It's love colliding with the curse of death. Do you know we weren't supposed to die? Go read the beginning of Genesis. Death came because they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and death entered the scenario. We weren't designed to die. So if you wonder why death feels terrible, it's because you weren't created to experience it. That's a result of the fall. That's why a funeral hurts. That's why separation hurts. That's why grief cuts so deeply, because you were not designed to process those emotions. Abraham mourns and yet still walks by faith. He doesn't walk away from his faith. He doesn't blame God for Sarah's death. He's not being led by his emotions. We're going to see a very stable Abraham after he's mourned. Because that's what repeated surrender to God produces over time. Listen, nobody is suddenly mature in their faith, right? Nobody got saved one day and they were fully sanctified the next day. Not even Jordan, whom everybody loves, right? It's repeated surrender to God over time. So let's continue. Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, hey guys, I'm just a sojourner and a foreigner among you. Give me some property among you for a burying place that I may bury my dead out of sight. Now, he's not saying give me some land. He's like, somebody sell me some land. This is how they would buy land. There's a lot of cultural stuff happening. The Hittites said, hear us, my Lord, you are a prince of God among us. They've seen Abraham do some amazing things. They've interacted with Abraham. They know about his faith. They see how much God has blessed him. And they know this guy is different. And they're like, dude, bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. Anyone you want, take it. We want you to have it. Faith remembers its true identity. Abraham says, I'm just a sojourner and a foreigner. Not because he belongs back in Haran, where he came from, or way back where he started in Genesis chapter 11. He knows this is not my home. My identity is rooted in who God has called me to be. I belong with the Lord. The Hittites, they see something fascinating about this guy. Like, this guy is different. This guy has faith that's different. He can be trusted. He fears God, and that's important because we get to the rest of the chapter, and it's this most awkward real estate transaction that we think, why on earth do we even need this in the Bible? And we understand that Abraham understands he represents God to these people. They said, you are a prince of God among us. Like, They get that this guy is different because of his faith. And that's the connection between faith and integrity. Faith affects integrity because identity drives integrity. If you are a Christian, it should be obvious. You shouldn't have to tell somebody. People should notice there's something different about you. We live differently because we've been changed by God through faith. We don't use our pain to manipulate other people. We ask questions like, what honors God or what would honor God, instead of asking, what benefits me and what's the cheapest way to get what I want? Integrity begins when you remember the name that you carry. To those who believe, to those who received, he has given the right to be called the children of God. You are a child of God. You are a prince or a princess of the king, and you carry that name with you. And integrity begins when we remember that whose name we carry. This is what repeated surrender to God produces over time. Verse 7. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of land, and he says, hey, if you guys are willing to sell me some land, ask Ephron over there to sell me the land on his property. That's the one I really want. Faith produces honorable character. Even in deep grief, Abraham behaves with dignity. Let me go back to that for a second. He rose, he bowed, he follows the customs, he speaks clearly, he respects the people. He doesn't say, just give me a deal, man, like I'm hurting. My wife's dead, the body's rotting away, somebody help me out. If anybody has an excuse for being like a little bit short or a little bit harsh today and maybe just a little bit on edge, it's the guy whose wife has just died. But that was the old Abraham who would get harsh and emotional and react. Now we see an Abraham seasoned through years of surrender. There's no deception, there's no manipulation. He's not panicking, he's not grasping for control. Why? Because suddenly he's a good guy? Oh, he must have studied his Bible enough that he knows what the rules are now. You think that's what it is? No, he surrendered to God, and God has changed him from the inside out. That's the evidence of a man who has been transformed by walking with God. Now, he's been walking with God for 60 years. So if you feel like, man, like I still don't have it together, that's okay. It took him 60 years, and he's a pretty important guy. It matters because pressure exposes what's really inside of us. Anybody can fake spirituality. Anybody can fake integrity when things are going well. But what about when emotions are hot? When stress hits, when conflict comes, when people frustrate you? It's just me. Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Like what's inside you is coming out. And that's not Jesus teaching you to like stuff it back down. That's Jesus saying, allow God to change your heart. David said, know me, Lord, search me and know my anxious thoughts. The Christian life isn't behavior management, it's heart transformation. We don't read the Bible for do's and don'ts. We read the Bible so God can change our hearts so that we just fall in line. So that we live a life fully surrendered till we come to a place of maturity. I mean, yeah, sometimes we have to force good behavior. Sometimes you just got to grit your teeth and I'm going to do the right thing. And hey, props to you for doing it, but that's not going to last. Right? You can pull it off a couple times when you're in a bad mood, but eventually, if what's in you is anger and fear and resentment, that stuff's going to come out. But over time, as you surrender to God, you start to notice some different things about you, like love, joy, peace, patience. There's a list of those in Galatians, right? It's fruit of the Spirit. Suddenly, like, you say something really nice and loving out loud, and inside you're like, oh, where'd that come from? It happens to me all the time. You're like, when, right? No, sometimes I say nice things. And it's not from me. It's like, wow, God has changed me. God is changing me. I mean, if you say you're a Christian and you can just kind of live with this constant rage and manipulation and dishonesty and entitlement and selfishness, I'd be very concerned. How do you respond when someone disagrees with you? How do you treat your employees when they make a mistake? I usually just throw things at them. Meatball sandwich. This way it's kind of like he's happy he got a meatball sandwich, but he's mad that part of it's on his shirt. How do you talk to your spouse when you're frustrated? No comment. Do people feel respected after they interact with you? Abraham's integrity wasn't seen because he preached a sermon to these guys. It was in their everyday conversations they said, this guy's different. Because faith affects integrity. Not externally. Yes, somewhat externally, but it starts internally. And then he has this conversation with this guy, Ephron. Ephron is sitting among them. He hears Abraham say, hey, would you guys ask Ephron to sell me this piece? Now, this is a public conversation because they don't have documents, so it's like everyone's going to witness this. He says, ask Ephron to sell me this land. And Ephron says, dude, no, my lord, I give you the field. I give you the cave and the side of the sons of my people. I give it to you. Bury your dead. And Abraham says, cool, thanks. No. He's not really giving it to him. Like, this is how they negotiate. Hey, I need a field. Take my field. No, let me pay. But he doesn't take advantage of the guy. Abraham bows down and he says, hey man, if you will, hear me. I'll pay you full price. Let me bury my dead there. Ephron says, my lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What's that between you and me? Bury your dead. So now he's naming the price. This is the back and forth that they're having. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named. That's why he said, what's a piece of land worth 400 shekels? Take it. Abraham pays him. Because faith refuses dishonest advantage. Abraham didn't take advantage of the guy. He could have said, you heard him. He said, take it. I love you guys. I usually say that before I'm about to say things that I don't want to say to you. So maybe I'll just say the rest of this to Alan too, because he gave you permission just kind of like to yell at him a little bit, and then you guys can pick up on this. But Abraham pays full price. He's completely in control of himself. He doesn't try to manipulate him. He doesn't say, $400, you kidding me? My wife just died. I had to go buy a funeral dress and a coffin or whatever it is they do. He pays full price. Because this isn't the same manipulative, scheming Abraham from way back in Genesis 13. This is a guy who's grown and matured and has surrendered himself over and over. Repeated surrender to God has changed him. Listen, people who trust God and trust God for provision, they don't need dishonest advantage. They're not looking to get over on someone because they trust God's provision. Christians should be the most trustworthy people in town. Are we? I have lots of conversations where, believe it or not, I bite my tongue. And lots of times I'm shocked at what people who carry the name of Jesus are okay doing in business as a customer or as a, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm getting tired. Sure, supplier. We'll call it supplier. Either end of a business transaction. We shouldn't be known for the, do we exploit loopholes? That's not who we are. We shouldn't be known for exploiting loopholes or abusing generosity or gaming the system. We shouldn't be taking advantage of someone just because we can, just because there's a process where I can get something out of it. For example, Alan, you shouldn't be creating 6 different email addresses to sign up for a freebie every 3 months so you can get a year and a half free of a product. That's not how the system was designed. They're offering you the free product for a couple months so you can see if you like it and whether you want to buy it. Not so you can scam them. That's stealing. Just because you found a workaround doesn't mean it's okay. And then you go to God and say, Lord, my finances are a wreck. And he's like, yeah, no kidding, Alan. We don't manipulate generosity that was designed to help the less fortunate. Every time something's advertised for free, we don't run down and get in line and grab as many as we can. Not if we can afford it. Maybe instead of taking advantage of all the free stuff, we go to the guy who's providing the free stuff and saying, can I help? Can I support? I like this idea. I want to help others. God has blessed me. I'm in a position where I can do that. Now listen, if you're in the position where you need the free thing, absolutely. But if you're not, don't take it from someone who needs it. That's dishonest advantage. Integrity asks, is this right? Long before it asks, can I get away with it? In fact, if you're asking, can I get away with it, you shouldn't be doing it. Alan. Faith protects both people in the deal. Integrity matters more than winning and saving a couple dollars. There are moments when protecting your witness matters more than squeezing every possible advantage out of a deal. Modern culture says, get yours, win at all costs, take whatever you can. Biblical faith says, I represent the king. And that's what Abraham understood. You are a prince among us. He was representing God to these people. And people who trust God for provision don't need dishonest advantage. He wasn't going to take advantage of this guy, Ephron. Business owners shouldn't dread Christians walking through their door because we're always asking for a deal because, oh, we go to church together. Christians should be known for honesty, fairness, generosity, and integrity. Faith affects integrity. So the field of Ephron at Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, to the field with the cave that was in it, all the trees that were in the field throughout the whole area was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites before all who went at the gate of the city. It's a public sale. Everybody is now aware who actually owns that property. After this, Abraham buried Sarah. We read the Bible too fast. Had to bury his wife. That couldn't have been easy. I couldn't even imagine what that would be like. Clearly, one of you are going to kill me long before Michelle dies, so I don't have to worry about that. But he had to bury his wife. During this whole negotiation process, his wife's body was in the tent. I mean, this guy's got to be tore up. And yet, what have we seen? He's acted with integrity. He's acted with respect. He's been patient. He's done the things he should do. Buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre. That is in Hebron, in the land of Canaan. It's weird they keep mentioning that. We'll come back to that. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. This is the cave of the patriarchs. Remember when Jesus was born and the king was Herod the Great? He was like psycho. The guy was a jerk. Well, he was actually pretty brilliant. One of the things he did when he became king of that area is he refurbished the temple, the one that Nehemiah built, and then he built this fortress around Sarah's grave. Like there's lots of places we read about in the Bible and we're like, we don't know where that is. It's kind of sort of in this area. You can go to Israel and they're like, we think this is kind of maybe the part of Bethlehem Jesus was born in. It kind of looked like this, but this is it. You can go and see The cave where Sarah was buried, where Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah, and Rachel. It's like suddenly the Bible comes to life in 2026. This is not once upon a time. This is historical stuff. You can see it. It's where he buried his wife. Faith invests in God's future promises. This is the first piece of the promised land that Abraham actually owns. Way back in chapter 12, go to a land I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless your descendants, and they'll be like sand on the seashore and stars in the sky. And dude finally gets a piece of property, and it's a cemetery plot. God promised descendants and a nation and land, and Abraham owns a cave. But the cave is an act of faith. Verse 19 just repeated, in the land of Canaan, as if we don't know. Like the oral record, the record that Moses wrote down, everybody knows that's in the land of Canaan. Why do you think that's a big deal? Well, if you remember at the end of last chapter, we talked about the story where Abraham took Isaac up on the mountain. He's going to sacrifice his own son. It's the biggest story in the Old Testament. And at the end of the chapter, you get this weird genealogy of hey, Abraham's brother Nahor back in Haran had a couple kids, and his kids had some kids, and here's their names, and nobody can pronounce any of their names. And you're like, why on earth would you follow up this massive act of faith that it prophesies all the things that are going to happen to Jesus with these names of these people from the town that Abram used to live in? Well, it's because he has roots back there. His brother's back there, his family's back there, and now he's got people who work for him, but is he going to take Sarah back to Haran and bury her? He doesn't. He buries her in the land of Canaan. In fact, it points it out multiple times, so we know that. Because Moses is writing this, and he's trying to emphasize a few things. One, this is not the same guy that we've seen screw up over and over again. The land belongs to Abraham by promise. Even though there's still people already living in it. But he doesn't take Sarah back to Hebron, and that matters. Because by faith, Canaan is now Abraham's home. He's wearing the identity of I represent God, and this is where I'm going to be. It's another sign of how much Abraham has changed. He doesn't run away when things get hard this time. He doesn't make up a story to hide from his pain. He spent most of his life trying to protect himself from pain, and now he's mourning, and he's grieving, and he's processing it, and he's handling himself in a much better situation. Why? Because now he's learned how to be good. No, because God has changed them. This is what you get with repeated surrender to the Lord. Years of surrender has taught him to trust God's promise. We know he dug a well, we know he planted a tree, and now he owns a cave. And those may seem like small things, but faith often looks like ordinary acts of obedience. Like giving when it feels safer to hold. Like serving when you're going to go unnoticed. Like raising your kids contrary to societal norms. Yeah, I don't care what the other parents allow your friends to do. I don't care what your science teacher said. I don't care what your philosophy teacher said. We know what the Word of God says, and this is what we believe, and this is how we're raising you. It's staying faithful through a difficult marriage season, whether it's weeks or months, or I hope not, but I've seen people do it for a year or years, and repeatedly surrendering and laying down your rights and letting God change you. The cave says, I believe in God's promises more than I believe in my circumstances. Abraham dies owning almost nothing, barely seeing God's promise fulfilled. But he never stops trusting that God's good for his word. Because faith doesn't judge God's promises merely by the present appearance. We believe that God's good for his word. Faith says God keeps his promise. And whether or not I see it today or I see it tomorrow, I know God is good for what he said he's going to do. That's why surrendered people, they build their lives differently, they give differently, they endure differently, they sacrifice differently. Because they believe that God's future is a real future. This is what repeated surrender to God produces over time. Faith affects integrity. Listen, Abraham's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but he surrendered. And that's the arc of the story. It's God found this nobody who wasn't pursuing him, and God chose him, and God called him. And through all the ups and downs, through all the times when we thought this guy should get cut from the team, he kept surrendering, and God kept loving him, and God kept calling him. Let's leave this series with one question. Are you surrendering to God in a way that God is changing you? Because if your faith hasn't changed you, it hasn't saved you. If you're the same person and now you're just trying to follow the rules, listen, I tried that for years. You have to submit. You have to surrender. You have to say, God, I can't do this. You have to change me. And over time, the things that God's doing in you will start to flow out of you, and people will see integrity. So stop fighting against the surrender that God's calling you to. He loves you. He has good things for you. He wants good things for you. This is what happens when repeated surrender to God occurs over time. Let's pray.